It's Dr. Paul Cleveland with Boundary Stone. We're trying to help you to understand your confusing world. Sometimes I think all of us kind of feel out of place in the culture that we live in, and we wonder sometimes, especially those of us who've lived a while, how did we get here? What was the process? Well, I think the reason we got here is we have not properly understood some basic principles of economics. And I had a professor, in fact, he was my thesis chairman, and he said, whenever you're in doubt, always go back to the principles, because the principles are always going to be true, and I think that's right. And so really the first principle of all economics is this: there's no such thing as a free lunch. That in this world, in fact, God created it this way, even before the fall. He put Adam and Eve in a situation where they're going to have to work to get what they wanted. And in fact, they were given a mandate: go into all the world and to take dominion over it. Well, to do that, to accomplish our ends, always requires us to have means. And in economics, we call the means to our ends economic goods. Things that we're producing to help us to achieve our ends. Our ends might be as minuscule as what we're going to have for lunch, and maybe that's an easy one to solve, but they could be far more difficult. Our ends might be providing for ourselves, being able to purchase a home or an automobile. So it could be a lot bigger investment or purchase than just getting lunch today. Well, so the question then arises, well, how can we get those things that we want to achieve our ends? And at the end of the day, there are really only four ways. If you want it, you could produce it yourself. Well, that's really hard. I'm not sure I know how to make an automobile. And or a gallon of gas. How do I do that? I don't know how to go out and drill for oil. Maybe after an oil spill I could go get some, but I don't know how to refine it. And so I'd have to figure all those things out if I wanted just to produce a gallon of gasoline. So what we do most often is we produce something and use that to trade for what we want. And most often the thing that we trade is our own labor with employers. And so trade is our primary way. In fact, trade allows us to live far better than we can ever live otherwise. I mean, think of it for a moment. Trying to produce a gallon of gasoline, well, I'd probably spend my lifetime trying to do that in terms of my effort and work at it. But I can go down and for a fraction of an hour's worth of my labor, buy a gallon of gasoline for what? A little over $2? And everybody who had a hand in producing that did it of their own volition. Well, there's only two other ways to get what you want. You can steal it, which is the first labor-saving device known to man. Take it from somebody else by force or fraud. Now, this is not economic. In fact, the logic of the thief suffers from the fallacy of composition, believing that what is true for me is true for everybody. And of course it's not. And if everybody tries to live as thieves, stealing from everyone else, well, we'll all starve to death. And by the way, this is why socialism doesn't work. It's not an economy. It's a political system where everybody's trying to steal from everybody else what they want. And it fails every time. Well, there's only one other way, and of course that's charity. Somebody could give it to you. But once again, charity, it cannot be generalized. You can't base an economy on it because it also presupposes prior production. And you can't give anything away that you hadn't produced yourself. And think about this. The Apostle Paul in Ephesians 4:28 said, "Let him who is stealing steal no longer, but do something useful with his own hands that will have something to share with those in need." And that's good information. Of course, Jesus is our highest example of what real charity is about. And I think God does want us to participate in charity as a response to the grace and mercy is shown us in Jesus Christ. So I hope this is helpful to you as you think through this, and we'll probably be talking more about this one later in time. But once again, principles of economics matter, and this is why we wrote our book, Basic Economics, and while we're currently updating that, trying to get it to your level so you'll really be able to grasp those fundamental principles. Well, this is Dr. Paul Cleveland with Boundary Stone. Check us out on our website, and I'll talk to you next time. All the best.